I found out my son was married through a stranger's post. Not a phone call, not a card, not even a polite message. Just a photo that appeared on my screen while I was scrolling in the quiet of my living room. A place that still had his childhood trophies on the shelf and his graduation photo on the wall. White roses, crystal lights, a ballroom that probably cost more than my yearly pension. And there he was, my son, smiling in a tailored suit, standing beside a woman I barely knew, surrounded by people who clearly belonged there. I stared at the photo for a long time, waiting for my brain to correct itself. "This must be an engagement," I whispered. But the caption crushed that hope. "The best day of our lives, married." Married. My fingers went numb. My chest felt tight, not from pain at first, but from disbelief. I was his mother. I was the woman who raised him alone after his father walked out. The woman who worked double shifts, skipped meals, and pretended everything was fine so he wouldn't feel the weight of our life. And yet, I wasn't worth an invitation. I zoomed in on the photo, looked at the guests, looked at the smiles. Everyone looked comfortable. Everyone except the one person who wasn't there. Me. I didn't cry that night. Shock is quiet like that. 2 days passed before I called him. He answered on the third ring. "Hey, Mom." His voice was polite, careful, like he already knew why I was calling. "I saw the pictures," I said. A pause. "Oh." That single sound told me everything. "You got married," I continued. "Why didn't you tell me?" He exhaled slowly, as if I had asked something unreasonable. "Mom, the wedding was complicated." Complicated how? Another pause. Then the words came, words I will never forget. It just made more sense to keep it small. Her family was more involved. They deserved it. Deserved it. I gripped the phone tighter. "And I didn't," I asked. Silence. Then he said it. "It wasn't personal. You wouldn't have fit the vibe." The vibe. 30 years of motherhood, reduced to a vibe problem. "I see," I said quietly. He seemed relieved, like he expected screaming and was glad I didn't give it to him. "We'll talk later, okay? Things are busy right now." The call ended. I sat there long after the screen went dark. Memories began lining up in my mind without permission. His first day of school, him crying, me smiling through it. His fever at 16, me sitting up all night with a wet cloth. His college acceptance, me taking out a loan I never told him about. I had been there for everything, except the day he decided I no longer mattered. 3 days later, the doorbell rang. A courier stood outside with a large envelope. For one brief, foolish second, I thought it might be a delayed invitation. An apology. Something human. I opened it at my kitchen table. There was no letter, just an invoice. $65,000. Itemized, precise, cold. Venue costs, catering adjustments, bride's family honor expenses. And at the bottom, a line that made my hands tremble. Mother's share. I sat back slowly. Mother's share for a wedding I wasn't allowed to attend. Then I saw the note attached. "Since you couldn't make it to the wedding, we assume you'll at least help cover your part." Couldn't make it. As if I had declined. As if I had chosen absence. Something inside me went very still. This wasn't about money. This was about erasing me, then charging me for the privilege. I folded the paper carefully and placed it back in the envelope. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't call him back. I did something far more dangerous. I started remembering everything. And when a mother who has been underestimated begins to remember, someone is about to learn the true cost of disrespect. I read the invoice again the next morning, not because I didn't understand it, but because I needed to be sure it was real. $65,000. My annual pension wasn't even half of that. I laid the papers out on the table like evidence at a trial. Each line felt deliberate, calculated, as if someone had sat down and decided exactly how much my silence was worth. I opened my bank app. Savings, retirement fund, the emergency account. I'd built one careful deposit at a time. All of it represented years of restraint, years of choosing my son over myself. For a moment, the old instinct surfaced. Pay it, keep the peace, don't lose him. Then another thought followed, sharper and clearer. If I pay this, I will disappear forever. The phone rang before I could talk myself out of thinking. His name. I answered. Did you get it? He asked. No greeting, no hesitation. Yes, I said. Good, he replied. I wanted to make sure there wasn't any confusion. Confusion. I looked at the invoice again. You expect me to pay for a wedding I wasn't invited to, I said. He sighed, impatient. Mom, please don't turn this into a thing. Weddings are expensive. Her parents have already done so much. And I haven't, I asked. That's not what I said. But that's what you mean. There was a pause, then his voice softened. The same tone he used as a child when he wanted something. This isn't about the past. It's about moving forward. Moving forward. Without me. You didn't even tell me you were getting married, I said. I knew you'd react like this. That sentence landed harder than the bill. You hid it because you knew it was wrong, I replied. No, he said quickly. I hid it because I didn't want drama. Drama. I closed my eyes. I was your mother, I said, not your problem. He didn't respond. Then he said something that changed everything. My wife feels like you're trying to guilt us. Your wife's. Not we. Not I. Someone else was speaking through him now. I didn't write the invoice, he added, but I agree with it. Agree. That was the moment I understood. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a decision. I need time to think, I said. Please don't wait too long, he replied. This is already awkward. Awkward. After the call, I sat alone for a long time. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I went back to the library, the place where I had spent most of my working life, where silence wasn't emptiness, it was clarity. I sat at a public computer and began searching. Parental financial responsibility, adult children and debt, emotional coercion, and family law. I wasn't planning revenge. I was searching for truth. 3 hours later, I knew one thing for certain. I owed them nothing. Legally, morally, and yet this still wasn't just about the money. It was about being rewritten. I went home and opened an old storage box. Inside were receipts, loan documents, medical bills, college tuition statements, all in my name. And at the bottom, a folded piece of paper. A note he had written me the day he left for college. I promise I'll take care of you one day. I didn't laugh. I didn't cry. I took out a blank sheet of paper and began writing. Not an argument, not an apology, an accounting. I listed every cost I had absorbed without complaint, every sacrifice that had gone unacknowledged, every silence I had maintained for his comfort. At the end, I wrote, You asked me for $65,000. Before I answer, you should know how much becoming your mother truly cost. I sealed the envelope, addressed it, and sent it. That night, for the first time since seeing the wedding photos, I slept peacefully. What I didn't know was this. That letter would arrive like a grenade in a marriage, already built on carefully managed lies. And the woman who thought she had erased me was about to realize she had only awakened me. The first call came less than an hour after the letter was delivered. I didn't answer. The second call came from a number I didn't recognize. I let that ring too. The third attempt came as a message. Mom, why would you send something like that? Something like that. As if I had mailed an insult instead of a lifetime of truth. I waited until evening before responding. Because you sent me a bill. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then the phone rang. This time I answered. You embarrassed us, he said immediately. No hello, no concern. By telling the truth, I asked. You didn't need to involve paperwork. He snapped. You made this a legal thing. I didn't, I replied calmly. You did when you put a price on my absence. Silence. Then a different voice cut in. Sharp, controlled, female. I think we all need to stay respectful. I recognized her instantly. His wife. You're on speaker, my son said. Of course I was. She spoke as if addressing a meeting. We never meant to hurt you, she said. But weddings are emotional. Boundaries matter. Boundaries. I wasn't aware mothers required permission, I said. She didn't pause. We felt your presence would have created pressure. Pressure. I smiled, though she couldn't see it. Interesting, I said, because I wasn't present. And you still sent me the bill. Her tone cooled. That was practical. Families contribute. Families invite, I replied. A brief silence followed. Then she said something revealing. My parents would never behave like this. There it was. Not concern. Comparison. You told them I chose not to attend, I said quietly. She hesitated. A half-second too long. We said there were complications, she answered. You lied, I said. She inhaled sharply. We protected the narrative. Narrative. I let that word sit between us. You built your marriage on a narrative. I continued, and now you want me to pay for it. My son cut in. Mom, please stop. Stop. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't insult her. I didn't beg. I will not pay the bill, I said. Any further discussion about money should be in writing. The line went dead. The email arrived the next morning. From her. Subject, let's be clear. It wasn't an apology. It was a warning disguised as politeness. She wrote about fresh starts, about emotional energy, about not dragging the past into the future. And then the real message appeared. If you don't contribute, you will permanently damage your relationship with us. Us. She spoke as if she owned him. I closed the laptop and went for a walk. The air felt different, lighter. I realized something important that day. They weren't afraid of losing me. They were afraid of being exposed. That afternoon, I pulled out a folder I hadn't opened in years. Inside was the university loan agreement. My name, my signature, his responsibility. A clause I remembered clearly. In the event of dispute, repayment remains with the beneficiary. At the time, it had meant nothing. Now it meant everything. That evening, my phone rang again. A different number. I answered. Is this Mrs.? A man asked. Yes. This is the bride's father. My heart didn't race. I had expected this. We were told you declined to attend the wedding, he said slowly. I said nothing, that you preferred not to be involved. I took a breath. I was never invited, I replied. Silence flooded the line. I would never have allowed that, he said. I believe you, I answered. Another pause. This changes things, he said quietly. When the call ended, I sat down, because I knew what that meant. The narrative had cracked, and once truth enters a marriage built on control and appearance, it doesn't knock, it spreads. That night, my son didn't post anything. No photos, no captions, no perfect smiles, and for the first time, I wasn't the one being erased. I was the one being remembered. The calls stopped for 2 days. No messages, no emails, no carefully worded threats pretending to be concern. Silence can feel peaceful, but this silence was strategic. They were regrouping. On the third morning, a thick envelope arrived in my mailbox. Not handwritten, not personal, illegal. I didn't panic. I made tea first. Then I opened it. It wasn't a lawsuit. It was a demand letter, carefully phrased, emotionless. It claimed the $65,000 was a voluntary family contribution that I had implicitly agreed to by past financial involvement. I smiled. They were guessing. They had no proof, so they were inventing confidence. I placed the letter beside my own folder and drove to my lawyer's office. He read everything slowly, didn't interrupt, didn't rush. When he finished, he leaned back and said something that felt like air returning to my lungs. They have no case. He tapped the demand letter. This is intimidation, he continued, and a clumsy one. Then he opened the loan agreement. Scrolled. Stopped. His eyebrows lifted. Did your son ever repay any of this? No, I said, not a dollar. He nodded. Then legally, he owes you. The words didn't thrill me. They grounded me. Because this was no longer about pride or punishment. This was about reality catching up. We sent a response the same day. Clear, formal, unemotional. It stated, I had no financial obligation toward the wedding. Any attempt to pressure or coerce payment would be documented. Outstanding educational debt was noted. Future communication regarding finances should occur through counsel. At the bottom was a single line. This letter serves as notice that continued harassment may result in legal action. That evening, my phone rang. My son. I answered. His voice sounded unfamiliar. Lower, uneven. Why did you do this? He asked. Because you forced me to, I replied. You didn't have to involve lawyers. You didn't have to send me a bill. He exhaled shakily. I didn't know about the loan clause, he said. You didn't ask, I replied. There it was. A quiet truth neither of us could undo. I feel like everything is falling apart, he admitted. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. You built something on omission. I said, this is what omission costs. A pause. Then he said something I hadn't expected. My wife is furious. I said nothing. She says you're trying to control us. Control. The irony sat between us, heavy and undeniable. I never controlled you, I said. I supported you, there's a difference. He didn't respond. Later that night, an unfamiliar number called again. I answered. This is her mother, a woman said stiffly. We need to talk. Her tone wasn't hostile. It was concerned. We were told you chose not to attend the wedding. She continued, that you were difficult. I was excluded, I said simply. A long pause followed. That is not what we were told. No, I replied. It rarely is. The call ended politely, but not comfortably. That was when I knew. The story they had been telling was collapsing. Not because I shouted. Not because I begged. But because I documented. That night, my son posted a single photo. No caption. No comments allowed. It wasn't a celebration. It was damage control. And somewhere behind closed doors, a marriage that had begun with control and performance was discovering its first real test. Because once truth enters the room, someone always loses control. And next time, it wouldn't be me. The lawyer didn't react the way I expected. He didn't gasp. He didn't shake his head. He didn't ask me why my son would do such a thing. He simply adjusted his glasses and said, they made a serious mistake. Those words settled into my chest like calm after a storm. He reviewed the invoice first. Wedding expenses, he said. You were not invited. You never agreed. There is no legal obligation here. Then he opened the loan file. His expression changed, just slightly. This, he said, tapping the page, is very different. I watched his finger move across the paragraph I remembered signing years ago, back when I still believed gratitude was guaranteed. Your son is the beneficiary. He continued. You are the guarantor. He never repaid you. I nodded. Legally, he owes you, the lawyer said. And with interest, this amount is significant. I didn't smile. I didn't feel victory. I felt clarity. 2 days later, the notice was sent. No threats. No insults. Just facts. It stated, I was not responsible for any wedding-related expenses. Any further financial demands would be considered harassment. Outstanding educational debt remained unpaid. A formal response was required within 14 days. That was it. Clean, professional, unemotional. That evening, my phone rang nonstop. My son called 5 times. I didn't answer. Then a message arrived. Mom, why would you do this? Why? As if I had started something. I replied with one sentence. Because you already did. The next call came from his wife. Her voice was no longer calm. You're trying to destroy our marriage, she said. No, I replied. I'm refusing to be erased from it. You're humiliating us. You humiliated me first. Silence. Then she said something that told me everything. You could have just paid quietly. Quietly. So that was my role. ATM. Ghost. Silence. The next day, another call came, this time from her family. They weren't angry. They were confused. They had questions. And when people start asking questions, lies don't survive long. By the end of the week, the perfect narrative had collapsed. And my son was no longer speaking with confidence. He showed up at my door on a Sunday afternoon. No suit. No polished confidence. Just a man who looked like he hadn't slept. I opened the door and stepped aside. He stood there for a moment, unsure. I didn't know it would go this far, he said. I poured tea. Didn't argue. Didn't accuse. I didn't think you'd fight back, he admitted. There it was. Not regret. Surprise. They're upset, he continued. Her parents, they feel misled. I sat across from him. And how do you feel? I asked. He hesitated. I feel stuck. Stuck between the woman who reshaped him and the mother he thought would always absorb the damage. They're asking questions, he said, about why you weren't invited. I met his eyes. And what did you tell them? He swallowed. That you weren't told because it wasn't convenient. Convenient. I didn't raise you to be convenient, I said quietly. He looked down. I didn't mean to hurt you, he whispered. For months, you didn't mean to remember me, I replied. His voice broke. I thought if I kept you separate, life would be easier. And now, I asked. Now everything feels exposed. Good. Exposure is where truth survives. He stood up to leave, then stopped. They want me to settle things. He said, the loan, the notice. I nodded. That's between you and the law. He turned back. Can we fix this? He asked. I didn't answer immediately. Because love doesn't disappear. But trust doesn't return on demand. I'm not closing the door, I said. But I'm no longer standing behind it. He left quietly. That night, I slept without checking my phone. For the first time, my peace didn't depend on his approval. And somewhere, deep down, my son was learning something he should have understood long ago. A mother's silence is not weakness. It is restraint. And once it is gone, there is no invoice large enough to buy it back. The house that once felt untouchable for me now seemed fragile cracks showing in the perfect facade my son and his wife had built. Every message, every email, every unanswered call from me had unsettled them more than they realized. The $65,000 invoice had not only failed to intimidate me, it had awakened a quiet force they had underestimated. I received a call from my lawyer. They want a meeting, he said. I smiled, calm, controlled. You set it up, I said. The meeting was scheduled at a neutral location, a small office downtown. Sterile but safe, they walked in with confidence, expecting to intimidate, expecting me to flinch. But the woman, the one who had orchestrated the narrative, her composure cracked first. I saw it in her eyes: doubt, frustration, the fear that had been carefully buried behind polite words. My son sat beside her, silent, unable to defend himself. For the first time, I saw the boy I had raised, uncertain, vulnerable, trapped by someone else's story of him. The discussion began. My lawyer led the way, presenting documents, receipts, and the college loan agreement. Everything was clear, everything was undeniable. I watched as the narrative of guilt they had tried to impose collapsed line by line. Her voice quivered. We didn't know. You did know, I said softly. You chose to erase me. And then you demanded payment for the space I never occupied in your life. Silence fell. My son's gaze finally met mine, guilt, shame, and the dawning realization of his mistake flashing through his eyes. The legal terms were explained. The $65,000 invoice, invalid. My son owed me nothing, legally or morally. And the clauses he had signed years ago, they were on my side. No more threats, no more manipulation, no more narrative rewriting. But the real victory was not the law, it was the truth. I left that office with my dignity intact. My son didn't follow me, his wife didn't call me again, and the perfect life they had tried to build on lies had fractured irreversibly. Weeks later, I received a simple message from him. Mom, I'm sorry, I didn't see. And I replied, it's too late, but remember, a mother's love is never a debt to be paid. Sometimes, silence is stronger than anger. Sometimes, truth is louder than money. And sometimes, those who believe they can erase you discover that your memory, your sacrifice, and your love are indelible, untouchable. I had been underestimated. I had been ignored. I had been sent a bill for my absence. But I had reclaimed everything, my dignity, my voice, and the respect that was mine all along. And in the end, that was worth far more than any sum of money. The first sign of change didn't come from a lawyer or a letter. It came from their social media. Photos I had once scrolled past in silence now took on a different meaning. The perfect smiles, the staged captions, the curated perfection, all of it seemed hollow, almost forced. I watched quietly as comments started appearing. Friends, distant relatives, people who had only known a fraction of the truth began noticing inconsistencies. A cousin, unaware of the full story, asked in the comments, "Why wasn't your mother at the wedding?" Another wrote, "I thought she was supposed to be invited." The questions, polite at first, spread like ripples. At home, the atmosphere shifted. My son, once confident and untouchable, was now defensive. His wife, who had orchestrated every narrative, began snapping at small things, a misplaced cup, a forgotten text. I received an anonymous tip. The father of the bride had been quietly questioning the decisions she had made, realizing that excluding me had been both unfair and unnecessary. The tension in their household grew. I didn't interfere, I didn't gloat. I simply observed, patient, silent, untouchable. But the cracks weren't just social. My son came to me one evening, face pale, voice trembling. "Mom, I don't know what to do." She's furious. My in-laws are asking questions. People online are talking. It's falling apart. I watched him carefully. The boy who had once dismissed me as irrelevant now looked to me for guidance. "I told you truth matters," I said softly. "You can't erase the past by pretending it didn't happen." He hung his head. That night, I realized something profound. The power I had regained wasn't just legal. It wasn't just moral. It was undeniable. The respect that had been stolen from me could not be bought, coerced, or erased. By the end of the week, the woman who had tried to rewrite our family's story was desperate. Her carefully curated social media accounts were flooded with messages, subtle, questioning, skeptical. Friends began asking why I hadn't been present. How could such a loving mother be excluded? And through it all, I remained silent. I had learned the most important lesson. Revenge doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't need to humiliate. Sometimes, the quiet, relentless truth is enough to unravel even the most carefully constructed lies. By the time they realized what had happened, it was too late. The foundation they had built on deceit and manipulation had cracked irreversibly, and there was no going back. For the first time in years, I felt peace. Not because I had proven them wrong, but because I had reclaimed myself. And the world, the truth, was finally catching up to them. It started with whispers. Friends, distant relatives, and acquaintances began asking questions, sharing small pieces of what they knew. One post, a simple question about my absence, sparked a chain reaction. Within days, the story spread quietly, yet powerfully. Then came the first direct confrontation. My son called, voice tight, almost broken. "Mom, people are talking. They know everything now." I didn't mean for this to happen. I didn't answer immediately. I let the silence stretch. I just wanted a happy wedding. I didn't think. "Didn't think what?" I asked softly, though my heart was steady. "That your mother mattered more than appearances." He went silent. The next morning, I received an email, CC'd to his wife and her family. The father of the bride had discovered the invoices, the letters, and the truth behind their narrative. His tone was firm but fair. Excluding a parent and then demanding money is unacceptable. Any further actions of this nature will be considered harassment. It wasn't just legal now, it was public, undeniable. I watched as the walls they had built started to crumble. Social media posts disappeared. Curated smiles vanished, and the couple, who had seemed untouchable, were suddenly scrutinized. Friends reached out privately, asking why I hadn't been included. People were questioning them, silently judging, seeing through the facade. Then came the conversation that sealed it. My son, for the first time, came to me, eyes wide, hands trembling. "Mom, I didn't know it was that bad. I didn't see what I was doing to you." I looked at him, not with anger, not with tears, but with a calm I hadn't felt in years. "You didn't see because you were never forced to see. Now you do." And finally, the truth hit him. The world had noticed what he and his wife had tried to hide. His marriage, built on secrecy and manipulation, had begun to unravel, not through my wrath, not through revenge, but through the quiet, unshakable power of truth. From that day forward, nothing was the same. They could not ignore me. They could not rewrite history. The respect I had earned, not demanded, not begged for, returned in full force. I had been disregarded, erased, and sent a bill for my own absence. But now I stood untouchable. The lesson was clear. No one can erase a mother's presence, her sacrifice, or her voice. And for those who tried, the world eventually shows them what they've lost. By now, the ripple I had created was a tidal wave. It wasn't just emails, messages, or quiet whispers anymore. The people who mattered, friends, family, and even colleagues, were openly questioning the narrative my son and his wife had built. Their once perfect life, carefully curated, began to crack in front of everyone. I received a message from an old family friend. "I can't believe they excluded you. You've done nothing but give and love. People are talking. Don't let them make you feel small. I smiled, quietly proud. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one being erased. The couple's house became tense. Every glance, every conversation, every small gesture carried the weight of public scrutiny. My son came to me, desperate. "Mom, I don't know how to fix this. Everyone is questioning everything. She's blaming me. I never wanted this to happen." "You were given a choice," I said. "A choice between truth and convenience. You chose convenience. Now you live with the consequences." His wife reached out to me too. In private this time, her tone trembling. I didn't realize how serious this would get. "Please, can we resolve this?" I replied calmly. "Resolution comes when honesty is accepted. Until then, actions have consequences." By the weekend, even distant relatives who had once sided with her were beginning to see the full picture. Photos of the wedding were analyzed. Stories were shared. Social media posts that were meant to hide me were being questioned publicly. I didn't have to chase justice. I didn't have to yell. I simply remained present, unwavering, and above all, truthful. Then one evening, my son called me, voice low, almost broken. "Mom, I understand now. I understand everything. I'm sorry. I failed you." I felt a mix of emotions: anger, sorrow, and finally, release. Apologies are empty if actions don't change. I said, "I've already given you what you need to see. Now it's your choice to act rightly." The weight of years of disrespect, manipulation, and exclusion finally lifted. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't just about the $65,000. It wasn't about a wedding. It was about respect, acknowledgement, and the power of truth. I had been erased, disregarded, and undervalued. But now, the truth had become unstoppable. And those who tried to hide it, they had no choice but to face it. It all came to head one quiet morning. My son knocked on my door, hesitant. He looked older than his years, not just physically, but in the weight of understanding he had gained. His carefully crafted confidence was gone. "Mom, I need to tell you something," he said, voice trembling. I nodded, silent. I had already heard everything through the whispers, messages, and public attention. I realized I was wrong, he admitted. "I let her rewrite me. I let the wedding erase you. I hurt you." I looked at him calm, not angry, not bitter. Actions speak louder than words. I said, "You've been given the chance to make it right. Start by acknowledging the truth. Not just to me, but to everyone involved." He swallowed hard. "I will," he promised. The next few days were remarkable. His wife, who had tried to control the narrative, now approached me humbly. No excuses, no manipulation, just recognition of the truth she had tried to hide. She admitted privately, "I underestimated her. I underestimated what it means to be a mother." And the couple, they faced questions from family, friends, and even social circles. The carefully curated perfect life they had displayed online and offline was now transparent. And they had no choice but to answer honestly. No more lies, no more exclusion, no more bills for absence. Through it all, I remained grounded. I did not gloat. I did not demand apologies. I simply stood firm in my truth. My worth could not be calculated in dollars. Weeks later, my son came to me again. "Mom, can we start over?" he asked. I smiled, a quiet, knowing smile. "Start over," I said. "But remember, respect isn't earned by appearance or money. It's given and it can't be taken away. Never forget that." He nodded, finally understanding. I had been ignored. I had been undervalued. I had been treated like a stranger in my own son's life. But in the end, I had reclaimed my dignity, my voice, my respect, and the lesson was universal. No amount of money, manipulation, or deception can erase the truth of a mother's love. It is enduring, it is unshakable, and it is untouchable. As I closed the chapter of this ordeal, I realized the real victory wasn't in legal documents or social exposure. The victory was in the restoration of what had always been mine: acknowledgement, love, and unwavering respect. I had been wronged, I had been overlooked, I had been billed for my absence, but I had emerged victorious, untouchable, and unbroken. The story ended not with anger, but with justice, not with revenge, but with the undeniable power of truth. And sometimes, That is more powerful than any sum of money could ever be. Even after the storm had passed, the echoes of what had happened lingered. The wedding was over. The bill had been ignored. The truth had been revealed. The world had seen. Yet, in the quiet of my home, I felt the weight of all those years of silence. Sometimes, late at night, I would find myself staring at the walls lined with memories. My son's childhood photos, his school awards, the little things I had saved for him. Things that told the story of a mother who had given everything without asking for anything in return. The shadows of neglect and manipulation hadn't vanished overnight. They were like dark threads woven into the fabric of family life, waiting for attention, waiting for acknowledgement. I received a text from my son, short and hesitant. "Mom, can we talk? I feel like there's so much we still haven't said." I paused before replying. The power in silence had taught me patience. I chose my words carefully. "I'm listening, but this time I expect honesty." He came over the next day. His shoulders were tense, his eyes searching. He sat across from me, and for the first time, the dynamic between us had shifted. I didn't realize how much I was influenced. He began, by her, by others. By trying to fit into an image I thought I had to maintain. I forgot what really mattered. "You weren't the only one," I said softly. "But realizing it is the first step. Acting on it is the next." He swallowed hard, nodding. The silence between us was heavy but no longer suffocating. Then came the hardest part, admitting the truth to her. He had called his wife. A long, tense conversation followed, filled with the cracks of guilt, the tremors of fear, and finally, recognition. She had to see that the narrative she had created was unsustainable. She had to confront the reality that a mother's love and presence could never be erased. By the evening, I felt a sense of calm I hadn't experienced in decades. Not because the conflict had ended completely, but because the foundations had shifted. I realized something crucial. Victory is not always loud. Sometimes it is quiet, slow, inevitable, and once truth is allowed to breathe, it changes everything. For the first time, I felt a freedom that no invoice, no wedding, no narrative could take away. The journey wasn't over, but I knew this. Anyone who tried to rewrite the story of a mother's love would ultimately discover it cannot be silenced. And in that quiet realization, I finally smiled, not just for myself, but for the generations of mothers who had endured the same erasure. Weeks had passed since the world had started noticing the cracks in the carefully constructed life of my son and his wife. Yet in the quiet of my home, I realized the real work was far from over. Public scrutiny was one thing. Private reconciliation was another. My son came over again, this time with a notebook in hand. "I've been writing," he said, voice hesitant, "trying to understand everything." I nodded. "Go on." He flipped through pages filled with memories, regrets, and reflections. Each line was a confession, a recognition of the years he had overlooked me, the sacrifices I had made, the love he had taken for granted. "I see now," he said, eyes glistening. "I was blinded by the image I wanted to present. I forgot the person who gave me everything without expecting anything." I reached across the table, touching his hand gently. Recognition is the first step, but actions are what heal. He nodded, and together we revisited the moments he had tried to erase. My late-night vigils during his illnesses, the college tuition I had silently paid, the countless sacrifices I had made for him. Each memory I reminded him of was a stitch in the torn fabric of our relationship. Then came the hardest part, addressing his wife. She had tried to manipulate, to control the narrative, to erase me from her husband's life. But now, with the truth out in the open, there was no way back. He called her. Their conversation was tense, laced with defensiveness, guilt, and finally, acknowledgement. She admitted her mistakes, recognizing that no one could rewrite history or silence a mother's presence. Later that evening, my son sat with me again. "I've apologized to her," he said, "but more importantly, I've apologized to you. I was wrong, I was blind, I am sorry." I looked at him, my heart steady. Apologies are empty unless they are followed by respect and change. I see both now, that is enough. The quiet reconciliation didn't erase the past. The wounds, the exclusion, the attempts to erase me, they remained. Etched in memory. but acknowledgement and honesty had laid a foundation for rebuilding. I realized then that this victory was different from the legal one, different from the social exposure. This was personal, deep, irrevocable. It was the reclamation of love, respect, and dignity, not just from the world, but from those who mattered most. And in that quiet moment, I understood the ultimate truth, the power of a mother's presence. Her love and her unwavering integrity is unstoppable. Even when the world tries to erase it, it endures, it thrives, and it eventually commands recognition, whether those who tried to deny it are ready or not. By now, the whispers had become a roar. The small circles of family and friends who had quietly noticed inconsistencies now began speaking openly. Social media, once a stage for curated perfection, became a mirror reflecting the truth. Every comment, every subtle question, chipped away at the facade my son and his wife had tried so carefully to maintain. The first public confrontation came unexpectedly. A distant relative posted a photograph from the wedding, one that included me in spirit, though absent in reality, and asked innocently, "Where was Mom in all of this?" The question, simple and polite, carried an undeniable weight. Within hours, friends, colleagues, and extended family began noticing. Questions multiplied, discussions erupted, people started connecting the dots. My son, once confident and untouchable in his carefully constructed life, became defensive. His wife, who had orchestrated the narrative, could no longer control the story. The world, silently at first, was forcing acknowledgement. I watched quietly, not from anger, not from malice, but from a calm sense of inevitability. The truth I had kept hidden for so long was now unstoppable. Then came the turning point, a phone call from an unexpected ally, the father of the bride. "Mrs.," he said, voice steady but firm, "I've been informed about everything. Excluding you, sending a bill, attempting to erase your presence. It's unacceptable. This cannot continue." I replied calmly, "It already has continued. But now the truth is visible. That is all I ask for." He paused. "It's time for honesty, not just in words but in actions." The exposure was complete. The narrative my daughter-in-law had built to control perception and maintain her perfect image began to crumble. Colleagues, friends, and extended family all saw the story clearly now. In the weeks that followed, my son came to me again. Humbled, his eyes no longer carried the arrogance of a young man who thought he could rewrite history. "I understand now," he said quietly. "I tried to erase the most important person in my life. I was blind. I am sorry truly." His words were sincere. I could feel it, not because of the confession itself, but because he had finally confronted the truth, without manipulation, without fear, and without excuses. For the first time in decades, I felt a profound sense of victory, not in money, not in social recognition, but in the restoration of what could never have been taken away: my voice, my respect, and the acknowledgement of a mother's unwavering love. And the lesson was clear. Those who attempt to rewrite history, manipulate truth, or erase those who gave everything will eventually face the consequences. No amount of control, social curation, or arrogance can withstand the force of truth, because truth, once unleashed, is unstoppable. The tension had settled into a strange calm. The public scrutiny had done its work. The cracks in my son's marriage were visible to everyone, and yet the real challenge was now private. Rebuilding trust where it had been broken. He came to me one evening, carrying the weight of weeks, perhaps months, of regret. "Mom, can we talk?" he asked, voice low, almost hesitant. I nodded. The room was quiet, filled with memories I had collected over decades, childhood drawings, photographs, keepsakes, each item a testament to a mother's unwavering devotion. "I need to tell you everything," he said. I didn't see it before. I let her narrative blind me. I excluded you, I erased you. I remained silent, listening, observing, waiting. I thought I was protecting everyone. I thought I was doing the right thing. He continued, eyes searching mine. "But I see now I was wrong. You deserved better. I am sorry." The apology was sincere, but I knew words alone weren't enough. Actions speak louder than words. I replied softly, "It's time to show. Not tell. Respect isn't a promise, it's demonstrated." It's earned through honesty and humility. He nodded, swallowing hard. I will. I promise. I'll make it right with you and with her. It was the first real acknowledgement I had received in decades. The first sign that my voice, my presence, and my worth were finally recognized. Later that night, I received a text from his wife. Her tone was tentative, fragile. I understand now. I acted wrongfully. I wanted control, but I lost sight of reality. I am sorry for what I did. I did not reply immediately. I let the words sit. Reflection, patience, and acknowledgement were my allies. Then finally, I sent a calm response. Apologies are meaningful when accompanied by respect and changed behavior. That is the path forward. It was not revenge. It was not humiliation. It was justice in its purest form, recognition of truth, acknowledgement of love, and restoration of dignity. In the days that followed, subtle changes appeared. My son's attitude shifted. His interactions became more mindful, more respectful. His wife humbled, stopped trying to rewrite the story. Together, they began to recognize the importance of honesty, transparency, and acknowledgement. And I finally felt free. Free from the burden of being ignored, erased, or undervalued. Free from the shadow of a wedding that had tried to charge me for my absence. I had reclaimed everything that had been taken. My voice, my respect, my dignity. And in that quiet, unshakable victory, I understood the ultimate truth. A mother's love cannot be erased. Her sacrifices cannot be measured. And her presence cannot be ignored. No narrative, no invoice, no manipulation can overcome that. And sometimes, the quietest victories are the most powerful of all. Months had passed since the wedding that had tried to erase me. The world had seen the cracks. Friends, family, and even strangers had witnessed the truth unfold. The narrative that my son and his wife had tried to control no longer held power. But the real transformation was quieter, deeper, and more lasting. My son had changed, not overnight, not because of shame, but because he had confronted reality. The reality of what it means to disregard the person who gave everything. His respect, his care, and his acknowledgement were now visible in every action, every word, every decision. His wife, too, had learned humility. She had seen firsthand that manipulation, exclusion, and control cannot erase the truth. She approached me privately, genuinely seeking understanding and reconciliation. And I gave it not out of weakness, but because the greatest strength is knowing when to forgive without surrendering your worth. I walked through my home one morning, surrounded by memories of a life filled with sacrifice, love and endurance, childhood photos, trophies, letters, keepsakes, each a testament to the years I had given unconditionally. And I realized something profound. The power I had reclaimed was not external. It had always been within me. The invoice, the wedding, the exclusion, they were symbols of a larger truth. The world may try to diminish you, manipulate you, or erase your presence, but no one can take what is inherently yours, your dignity, your voice, your love, your essence. And so I closed the chapter, not with anger, not with vengeance, but with serenity and unwavering confidence. My son came to me that evening. He knelt humbly, as he once had in childhood when he sought guidance. Moms, thank you for everything, for your patience, your love, and for never giving up on me. I smiled. Remember, the lessons you've learned aren't just about me. They're about life, respect, honesty, and the enduring truth of love. Never forget that. He nodded, and for the first time in decades, I felt complete. The wedding that had tried to erase me could not. The bill that had attempted to quantify me failed. The narrative that had sought to rewrite history collapsed under the weight of truth. Because truth, once acknowledged, is unstoppable. Because a mother's love, once given, can never be erased. And in that realization, I finally, utterly, completely won. The end.